Hello to all my story lovers. Welcome back in my channel. Now I'm continuing the Treasure Island, the part 4, the chapter 15, the flight, fight. The narrative as added by Dr. Lissy. Our trip this time was slower. The jolly boat was overloaded with men and cargo. Also, the tide was flowing against us. It kept pushing us back into the sea. Suddenly, the captain cried out, "The cannon!" Only then did we realize that the weapons were laid out on the deck. We saw a few pirates on deck aiming the guns our way. Gray told us that the Israel Hands was Flint's gunner. We knew then that we were being aimed by an expert among us. The square was the best with a rifle. He stood up and fired at the Hispaniola. Israel ducked, and man behind him was shot instead. The cannon was reloaded quickly. As the square pulled the trigger once more, they let loose their shot as well. The bullets went whizzing past our heads. The jolly boat shook because of the disturbance in the water caused by the shower of pellets. Its front part went underwater. The square and I managed to keep our guns above the water as we stood in shallow surf. Everyone else jumped into the water with our cargo. Their guns were ruined, leaving only ours to use. We also found that all our provisions were gone to add to our troubles. We heard voices coming near us and the fear being cut off from getting to the stockade. We ran quickly to the stockade, and with each step that we took, the buccaneer sounded closer. "Captain," I said, "the square has the best aim. Give him your gun. His own is useless." The captain passed his best gun to the square, who took aim. I, in turn, gave my sword to Gray. We knew he was on our side. We neared the stockade when some of the mutineers appeared. They saw us and stopped suddenly. The square and I fired, just as Hunter and Joyce did from the stockade. One fell dead, shot through the heart. The rest ran away. Our victory was short, for someone shot Red Ruth. He fell to the ground, not dead but bleeding. We carried him back to the stockade, where he passed away. The square went to the roof of the stockade and tied the flag of England to the top of the fallen tree. He came back and asked how many weeks it would be till another ship would come to look for us. I told him quite honestly that it could take months. That's when the captain told us that our rations were quite scarce. Just then we heard the cannon fire again and heard the ball fall somewhere close to the stockade. We knew they were aiming at us, but we weren't scared. "Oh," cried the captain, "fire away! You will never hit us from where you are. You will, however, do us a huge favor of finishing off your powder supply." That very night, Joyce and Hunter volunteered to try to rescue the supply from the shallow water, where the low side had left it on the sand. But unfortunately, Long John's men were already carrying most of it away. The captain recorded our details in his log book. Even as he was finishing, we heard a happy shout. "Doctor, Square, Captain, hello Hunter, is that you?" came the cries. I ran out just in time to see young Jim Hawkins safe and sound, climbing over the stockade wall. Now the chapter 16, the Garrison in the Stockade, narrative resumed by Jim Hawkins. As soon as Ben Gunn saw the Union Jack, he stopped and told me that I would find my friends at the stockade. He assured me that the pirates would not fly the British flag, but their own jolly Roger, the famous black flag with its skull and crossbones in white. He also told me that the stockade was built by none other than the Flint himself, who was the afraid of no one except Long John Silver. Well, let's go there before Long John himself find us, I told him. Ben made me swear that the next day I would send someone from our camp to meet him, as he had a proposal for us. Carry a white handkerchief with you, just to be on the safe side, he warned me. If you run into Long John Silver, don't let him know that I am on his island. That would ruin everything for us. I promise I wouldn't, and at that moment a cannonball went whizzing through the air, sending us both running in opposite direction. I came to a clearing and saw Hispaniola flying the Jolly Roger flag. I made my way to the stockade. On my way there, I found the white rock where Ben had been hiding his boat. Keeping this in my mind, I made my way over to the fence and into the arms of my friends. I told them my story and took stock of the log house. It was smoky from our fire, not to mention Grey lying wrapped in the bandage on account of his knife cut, and poor Tom cold and dead under a flag in the corner of the room. The captain wisely kept us busy with the chores to do, collecting firewood, digging a grave for Red Ruth. I told the doctor about Ben. Even though the captain grumbled, he knew that the losing that ship would prove best for us. I was so tired I slept like a log. I woke up in the morning to someone shouting, "Flag of truce! It's from Long John Silver himself." Now, the chapter 70, Silver's Embassy and the Attack. There were two men outside the stockade, one of them being Long John Silver, waving a white flag. "Who goes there?" asked the Captain Somerlet. "Captain Silver, this is the flag of truce," came the reply. "I would like to come aboard and make terms." He hopped his way over the fence and slowly, painfully made his way up the hills towards us. Once inside, the captain refused to let him inside the fort. So Long John Silver had to sit on the sand across from the captain. "It is quite cold to be sitting in the sand outside, sir," said Long John Silver. "That's not my fault," replied the captain. "This is all your doing. You were either the ship's cook or you are Captain Silver, in which case you are the pirate and mutineer. Therefore you must hang." Long John Silver greeted each one of us when he saw us guarding a point of the fort. "Well," said the Long John Silver, "here it is. We want the treasure. You want your lives. You have map and we want it. Now I mean no harm." With that, the captain burst out in anger and told Long John that he knew his plan. They quietly stared at each other for a long time. After a while, Long John Silver spoke. "Now you give us the map and you have a choice. We will take you back with us and drop you somewhere safe. Or you can stay here and we will give you half of the treasure. I think that's a fair enough deal." "Is that all?" asked the captain. "If so, here is my offer. If you come up one by one and unarmed, I shall put cuff on each of you and take you back to the fair trial. If not, I will see you all in the Davis Jones locker, drawn dead at the bottom of the sea. No treasure there. You can't sell a ship. These are the last good words you will have from me. Next will be a bullet in your back. Now get out. At least shake hands on it," cried Long John Silver. We each refused in turn. With that, Long John Silver got up, spitting in our freshwater spring as he passed it, and made his way to the fence, where his man dragged him over the side. As soon as he left, the captain scolded us for having left our post, except Gray, who had stayed on. We were ashamed. We then loaded our guns and waited for what would happen next. I don't have to tell you what's coming, said the captain. We were outnumbered, but we can fight if we hold our discipline. We took our position. Just then Joyce asked if he was to shoot if he saw a man. Of course, shouted the captain, and he sat down, fuming. Without wasting any time, Joyce ran into the woods. His shot was written by 3 smoking rounds of fire. When asked him he hit the man, Joyce said he had not. From that moment, we saw that the attack was on. A group of pirates ran out of the woods and straight to our fence. They climbed over it like monkeys, and we all fired. 3 of them fell, and one nimbly got up and disappeared. 4 others made the fence, while the 7 or 8 continued to fire towards us with a little effect. Soon, though, the 4 pirates fell on us fiercely and the position was reversed, we had gone from having secure cover to being openly exposed. There were shots everywhere. Captain Samolet all for us to draw our swords and fight hand to hand in the smoke. On grabbing my sword, I cut my knuckles. I saw Hunter being smashed with his own gun, which was taken by a pirate. I saw the captain slash a mutineer across his face, and I heard him yelling in injured voice. I turned to find Anderson, the pirate, coming for me, his sword high above his head. I had no time to be afraid, for I lost my footing and fell head first downhill. When I landed, I groggily saw one pirate coming over the fence with a dagger in his mouth, and then suddenly the fight was over. Gray had spared one, and another had been shot as he tried to enter the house. The doctor had cut down the third, and the fourth was now turning tail and climbing over the fence. Fire, fire from the house, cried the doctor, and you, boys, back into cover. I saw the price we had paid for this victory. Hunter was lying down, stunned. Joyce was killed, shot in the head. The square was holding a very pale Captain Somerlet. He is wounded. How many did we take down? Asked the captain. 5, the doctor said. The captain was grimly satisfied with this. Now, the chapter 18, How My Sea Adventure Began. The mutineers did not return that day. At our end, however, Hunters didn't recover from his injuries. He died that very night. The captain was wounded badly. Just after noon, after seeing that the coast was clear, the doctor took his pistol and headed out to meet Ben. Gray thought him insane for doing so. I couldn't sit and wait, so I sneaked out, filled my pockets with the biscuits, and went on my mission. I wanted to see if Ben's boat was still there and in good condition. I took pistols and powder. I know it was foolish of me to go alone, but by doing so I managed to save us all. I saw Long John Silver and the pirates pulling back to shore from the boat. I couldn't hear his parrot squawking in the wind. When I realized that they were heading in my direction, I hurried to the white rock. The boat was hidden below it. I was very simple and very light. I waited until the darkness and fog set in, and I carried the little boat out into the water. From where I was, I could see two lights, one coming from the defeated pirates on shore and the other from the ship. And that was where I quietly and carefully made my way. The tiny vessel I was in took me to the his peninsula quicker than I expected. It took a little while to get used to the boat, but it was fairly solid and light in waters. Soon I was at the side of the ship. I reached out and held the thick rope attached to the anchor, called the hawser. It was tight and taut. One cut with my knife, the ship would go humming along the tide. I also knew that the hawser could kill me with the force at which it would snap if I was not careful. The moment I finished cutting the final threads, it slipped under the water. There were loud, angry noises coming from the deck. It was Israel Hands and the man who came after me with his knife in his mouth. I heard them call each other terrible names. At that moment, a strong breeze came and the ship began moving away. Luckily, my boat didn't smash itself against the ship. I stood up and saw the two men fighting, holding each other by their throats. I ducked quickly and shut my eyes. Suddenly, I felt the boat moving quicker. We had gone past the shore. The campfire was right behind me. The ship was moving sideways. The sailors had ceased fighting as they knew something was wrong. I flattened myself against the bottom of my boat and trembled with fear. I must have been like that for hours. Soon I grew drowsy with the movements of the boat. I fell asleep, dreaming of my home and Admiral Benbow Inn. Now, the chapter 19, How I Struck the Jolly Roger. When I woke up, my boat was making its way to the south end of the island, and I was being tossed back and forth by giant waves. I realized that I could either drown or get smashed against sharp rocks, as I didn't have a paddle. The shore was impossible to get to. The boat stopped tossing and began to go smoothly over the waves. I thought if this continued, I could just about reach the land. The sun was burning brightly and my throat was parched. As I turned around the next cove, I saw something unbelievable. The Hispaniola was heading right at me in full sail. My first thought was that the sailors were chasing me, but then I saw that the ship was moving on its own. There was no one steering it. It occurred to me that I could try to take the ship back to the captain. But if the pirates were still on board, could I subdue them all and take control of the ship? The idea was appealing enough. The wind stopped for just a minute, as did the ship. Then, as suddenly as she stopped, she began to spin towards me with her cabin window open. I saw that the wood beam that jutted out from the mast would be over my head. Once it was over my head, I jumped up and caught the beam. The ship suddenly rose up in the waves and came crashing down on my little boat. I held on tightly to the beam, as I could easily get tossed back out into the sea. I slowly crawled my way to the deck. What a mess the deck was! The sails were up, but I saw the two watchmen lying in a heap not far from me. I saw Israel Hands and the other man too. He moved a bit, but the other man was dead. Just then Israel started moaning and moving about. I saw that he was hurt and bleeding as well. I walked over to him and stood over his body. He rolled over and called for something to drink. I searched for food and water. I took these on the deck and gave Israel some of it, but not before having my full share. He groaned and said, Long John's dead now. Where the heck did you come from? I have come to take back the ship, and you may call me the captain until further notice. He looked at me sorely but didn't say a word. I told him that I would now take down the Jolly Roger. I happily scampered up and cut the flag loose. That's the end of the Long John Silver, I said. Well, now, said Hans, this man and I were going to sell the ship back, but he's dead now. Now it's up to us. Why don't you get me something to tie my bleeding leg so that I can help you steer the ship? Do you think I am stupid? I am not going to let you sail back to where silver is. I said the north is where we shall go. I don't have a choice now, do I? I shall wherever you want to go. It is your ship. You are captain after all, cried Hans. After that, I helped tie this wound and gave him something to eat. We then sailed back to the shore. I noticed that his sad look had turned into a sneer and that he was watching my every move carefully. Now, the chapter 20, back to the shore with Hispaniola. Under the hand's guidance, we steer the Hispaniola over the ocean waves. We soon stopped for a quick meal. Captain, he began, I wonder if you could go below decks and get me my glasses. These old eyes could use a little help. I knew he was up to something and wanted me off deck. Of course, give me but a moment, I replied. With that, I ran below decks but came back out another way. Just behind him, I had taken off my shoes. I saw him carefully look around. Once he was sure he was alone, he gingerly got up and plucking the bloodied knife from the other man's chest, he tied it and hide it in his sleeve. It was clear he meant to kill me. I gave him the spyglass. He told me to follow his orders. Calling me Captain Hawkins, he pointed out where we might come in. So I ran about setting sails and making sure we hit our mark. Steady, steady now, said the hands, and at last moment I turned the ship hard and we made for shore. I was so caught up with work that I didn't realize he was standing behind me until the last minute. I turned and saw him lunging at me. I quickly let go of the sail and it snapped quickly, stopping him dead in his tracks. I ran before he could recover, but he was determined to get me. I reached for one of my guns and pulled the trigger, only to find that the sea water had made it completely useless. I threw down the gun and ran again, cursing my mistake. For someone who was wounded, he moved quickly. We dodged each other for a bit. Suddenly, the ship hit the beach and the jolt threw us bolt in the air. Luckily, Hands couldn't get up, so I made my way up the mast. There, I quickly positioned my guns and made them ready. He looked up and sneered. He came towards me, knife between his teeth, and began a slow, painful climb up the mast. One more step, Mr. Hands, and I will blow your brains out, I said. I even laughed a bit. Encouraging myself, he stopped and took the dagger from his mouth to speak. Well, we were caught. I would have had you if not for that landing. But I guess I'm just unlucky. I was smiling away when he cunningly sneaked a hand behind himself and threw a knife at me. The knife went through my shoulder, pinning me down to the mast. I cried out in pain and firing both pistols in shock. I dropped them into the water, and along with them, Israel's hands too fell into the sea. As Israel sank into the water, I saw the surface turning red with his blood. I could not loosen the dagger, and yet I was afraid I would fall to my death beside Israel. That thought was enough to help me pull myself loose from the mast. I was only pinned by the tiniest piece of my shoulder, mostly by my shirt. I slowly crawled down the mast and then, looking around, decided to throw the other dead man off the ship. I left the ship after setting her straight. I leaped off the deck and happily headed for the forest. As darkness fell, I was confused about direction. Soon my path was lighted by the moonlight. When I came to the stockade, I saw the smoldering remains of fire. I stood there wondering why there had been such a huge fire. I immediately thought that something had gone amiss while I was away. So I began to crawl on my hands and knees. When I got to the door and stood up, I could see absolutely nothing. I walked in and thought of going to sleep in my corner, surprising them in the morning. Just then I heard a shrill cry, one that chilled my heart. Pieces of eight, pieces of eight, the voice kept repeating. It was Long John Silver's parrot, Captain Flint. He was the watch, and he had found me. I turned to hear Long John's voice saying, "Who goes there?" I turned only to run into the dead bodies lying all around. "Dick, get some light here," cried Long John. When I was caught, a man left and soon came back with a flaming torch. Now, this is the end of the part 4. Do you like it? Then comment it. The next part will come in soon. Till then, take care. Bye bye. Subscribe my channel.